Oh, Christmas.
Christmas and Hanukkah.
Yeah, it's the second night of Hanukkah as we record this, right?
Well, no, it's been Hanukkah for a little while.
No, it hasn't.
Was
It's
last
almost over.
last
Oh,
night
as we
not the
record
first?
this.
Yes,
As we
yeah.
record this.
Oh, yeah.
It's still technically the first day of Hanukkah because nightfall has not come yet.
Right.
But we should be airing on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Yes, I think this should be coming out on Christmas.
I
So
believe it's day 4.
Merry Christmas
Now,
to everybody
for
from Contesting Wrestling.
Yes.
For some reason, there has been a lot of debate this Christmas season about Christmas movies and what counts as one, and mostly surrounding Die Hard.
I've heard that for a few years there. Yeah.
I feel like hasn't this whole like Die Hard Christmas movie haven't we played this out as a society? Because I first started hearing about this in like 2003.
It's the way these kind of things go viral. Different people hear about it on different years.
What I want to say is I showed 12 Monkeys to my class this semester, my science fiction and philosophy class.
Oh wow.
That is also a Christmas movie.
Because it takes place mostly during Christmas?
Yes. And I think is a better movie than Die Hard.
Probably.
It's a
Yeah.
very different kind
I
of
really
movie,
like
that's
12
for sure.
Monkeys.
Yeah, I like 12 Monkeys too.
It's a tightly developed time travel story without inconsistencies, really. I mean, there's a couple question marks, but
it is the one kind of time travel that works.
right, where you
Yeah.
don't change the past at all.
Yeah, where just everything has already happened.
It happens in your personal time later because
Yeah.
you are the time traveler going to the past, these events in the past. But in terms of objective time, they had always been that way.
Every other time travel movie has to either has to have a convoluted reasoning that doesn't really work if you think about it, or another Bruce Willis time travel movie, Looper, where they're just like, look, man, is that why you're here? No, I don't fucking think so. So let's not even explain it.
As Doctor Who puts it, wibbly wobbly,
Wobbly.
timey-wimey.
Yeah.
Which is, come on, Endgame. Like,
Yeah, they got that. That got a little. That's the thing. Well, that's always the problem with time travel is that it's it can be a little too, with magic in general. Anything magical, anything that is not actually subject to logic, you have to be very careful with
You
it.
gotta
in
be
storytelling.
judicious. Like the rules don't even have to be that consistent, but they have to be consistent within a curve.
Yeah.
which I'll say, the newest Terminator movie, fuck that shit. It was like insultingly nonsensical.
Really? I
the
did
time travel
not see
shit,
it.
like right from go.
Yeah.
I mean, it was kind of fun, and I guess, like, what do you expect? It's a fucking Terminator movie, but still, I was very put off by a lot of it.
So this is contesting time traveling.
Yes, contesting time movies.
Wrestling with time.
Wrestling
Yeah.
with time.
I will say before we move on to the actual wrestling part of the show, I also think you can go too far in the other direction, where the cult classic Primer is an example of what happens when you try to make a logically consistent time travel movie, and it's just very dense and
Yeah.
not that fun to watch. And
The first Terminator movie, by the way, is the only actually consistent Terminator in terms of time travel.
Yeah.
Because they prevent the thing that would have changed the future.
Okay.
So the future ends up being the same.
actually, I haven't seen the first one in so fucking long. I can't really remember it.
Whereas the second one, they change things
Yeah.
to get a different future.
That's a shame that the new one is bad. I had heard it looked like it would be cool, but the new one with Linda Hamilton is back, right? That's the one you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's things, she's good.
Sure.
There's things I like about it, but yeah, that's as far as logical consistency of time travel, no, not so good.
On today's minisode, we are reflecting on the Hogan episode.
The second one,
On the second
The
one.
second one. Okay.
Hogan Warrior, Hogan Warrior 2, and the Hogan turn to the and creation of the NWO.
Within the first, if you've noticed probably that the holidays have messed with our release schedule a little bit. So once we're in the new year firmly, we're going to be back on our regular main feed Monday, premium episode Wednesday, minisode Friday.
But we also didn't use the holidays as an excuse not to record a bunch of stuff. So it's all coming.
Yeah.
I will say every year I was proud of myself because every year it's usually December 1st is when I start being like, oh, it's December. Who fucking can get anything done? And then I just use that as an excuse to not get anything accomplished, even though it's clearly my fault. And that didn't start for me this year until like the 20th.
December's always my hardest time because it's, finals and grading and all that shit. And then we're doing this shit on top of it, so it was even harder this year.
So speaking of botched time travel, Hulk Hogan over the years just gets leatherier and leatherier.
He seems to be moving through time at an exponentially accelerating rate.
Which is strange because he's moving through space much slower than he ever did.
Well, that's how relativity works.
I guess that's how relativity works.
Hulk Hogan, the ultimate example of relativity through decrepitude.
Relativity through decrepitude.
Yep.
That'll be my next metal album. That's our next metal album.
There you go.
It has been 10 years since the last Godox.
I really hope that this podcast becomes so popular that Godox has to reform.
That would be
and
great.
do so, because I will say, of all of I spent a long time playing music, and I was always very concerned about, like, am I going to be able to make a living as a musician? Am I going to, is the project that I'm working on, is it going to go somewhere? Is it going to get paid? Which is a terrible way to approach things as a musician, but also kind of something you have to do if you're trying to make a living doing it. It's a hard
way to approach things when you're an idealistic teenager. Once you're in your mid-30s, you realize that the stuff that you do has to produce a positive outcome, as well as being good and fulfilling.
It is, but I will also say at the same time that I feel like when I look back on my musical, on my life as a musician, the most artistically pure thing I ever did was Godox, because it was just it was kind of like this podcast a little bit, where it was really just an excuse for friends to get together and do something that we all loved and like not really care about the long-term effects, and also still wanting it to be good, still wanting to work on it and make sure that it was of quality when you put it out.
Godox is probably my favorite of the stuff that y'all ever did, honestly.
If listeners,
it was really cool.
If listeners don't know or never heard the episode where we explained it, Godox is mine and Ben's old metal band that serves as the theme song to this podcast.
It was really the only band I was ever in where we weren't trying too hard.
It was clear. I'd come to y'all's rehearsals, and it was like fun, and that's what made it good.
Well, yeah, we were trying the right level of hard, because we weren't fucking around.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Not at all.
The right level of hard is...
That's what life is about, isn't it? So...
Dicks.
Hulk Hogan.
Yep.
The right level of hard.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Biceps, I'm sure.
I don't know if he had to explain to the judge if his hardness levels were the same as Hulk Hogan's hardness levels. He was like, Terry Bollea's penis gets not the right level of hard, whereas Hulk Hogan's is like the optimal level, perpetually. Yeah, never stops.
Well, you can't see it in those little trunks he was wearing. I figure he meant it was 10 inches flaccid.
Oh.
If it was 10 inches flaccid, then you're gonna have a hard life.
Yes,
sexually. Because it's hard to move through life with a penis that. Then I mean, if traditional ratios are true for Hulk Hogan as they are for everybody else, we're talking a solid 36 inches erect.
I think it's probably existing in a pocket dimension while he's wrestling.
I would hope.
And then he only brings it into our reality,
Sometimes in the shorts, I will say you do see like a little nubbin in the shorts in a way that I feel more aware of his junk than a lot of other wrestlers.
I realize I don't have much more to say about these matches than we already kind of overanalyzed.
I have a couple.
What do you got?
Yeah,
Professor?
please go.
In the episode, I started saying why the match had to happen in Canada, and I never ended up explaining that. Well, it's because, as Evan explained or described, Ultimate Warrior is this sort of cartoon version of a Native American, like shamanistic kind of thing. Hulk Hogan is a representation of American Christianity, and Hogan lost the match, and you couldn't do that in the United States.
No, too much Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
In the United States.
You had to do that in heathen Canada.
I mean, I don't know how much, I don't know how much people were aware of the Ultimate Warrior being a Native American.
It's a subtle, unconscious thing.
Yeah.
It's like.
Well, there were such like overt Indian characters in wrestling as it was that Warrior's influence there did kind of fly under the radar. You wanted to look more at like Wahoo McDaniel or even Tatanka at the time.
He also, but like he did.
But they were actual Native American
Yeah.
people.
I mean,
you know,
Native American or not, Warrior had a very non-Christian mythology
yes.
Yes.
in his promos, talking about the great warrior spirit and all that kind of stuff. Whereas Hogan was very much talking about Jehovah.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yes, the man upstairs.
The man upstairs, indeed, who I think I already said this somewhere else, but I really thought he was talking about Vince McMahon when I first heard him say that.
That's
There's a lot
good.
of overlap between Vince McMahon and the God of Abraham.
Yes, well,
I
they
mean-
had that match eventually. We talked about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't raised believing in God or like, I was raised as a Buddhist and without any like clear divinities or anything like that. So like Vince McMahon was the best analogy for me for
Sure.
what they were talking about when the religious folks talked about God.
That's really interesting,
Yeah.
actually.
That's
Tells you a lot
Yeah.
about my psychology, I guess.
and it is
Yeah,
remarkable
does.
what can fall into what can like slide into that slot sort of if it's empty in your childhood. Like I technically come from a Catholic family,
Yep.
but my father like had like a bitter hatred of the Catholic Church. I don't think anything happened per se. I think he was just raised in the generally
My mom's the same
emotionally
way, yeah.
abusive
Yeah.
space of the Catholic Church. And so, I was raised with no religion whatsoever. I don't think he came to identify as an atheist until later in life, but it was something that was either not present in my childhood or something that like we would do to like make grandma happy once a year, that kind of thing. But I definitely have all of the same issues, like with like guilt and shame and like feeling that I'm being even my thoughts are somehow being judged by an intangible force, because all of that shit can power through multiple generations of atheism.
Oh,
You
so
do
you-
not need
Oh,
God
yeah.
to have all of that stuff.
Not at
yeah.
all.
It's the term recovering Catholic I've heard
Yeah.
my mother say.
Absolutely.
I
Yeah,
was
I
baptized,
empathize
but
with
I was
that.
not confirmed, so I don't know.
So yeah, speaking of the supernatural, we were talking about people living their gimmicks on the whole 10-inch penis Hulk Hogan thing, but also like the fraught relationship a wrestler might have with
With their own penis, yes.
with their own penis,
Yeah.
reconciling their wrestling character with their real life. And we were talking about the Undertaker. It was funny on the shoot interview that Undertaker did with Steve Austin, the Broken Skull sessions.
Something like that, yeah.
He mentions that people would come up to him and like adults be like, "Are you really dead?" Like frequently he would
Yeah.
get this. Fucking odd.
His manager, Paul Bear, said people would come up to him at the supermarket and be like, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "I'm buying food." But he was an interesting case because he was an actual licensed funeral director, and occasionally he would be out of the wrestling business, and he would go back to he'd keep his license up, and he'd go back to being a practicing funeral director. And sometimes wrestling fans would come in and be like, "Oh, you're really..." And he says it was nice. It would help soften the thing, which is a big part of the job of being a funeral director.
that-
you know?
He did not subsist entirely on embalming fluid.
No, he did not. Even though he did look like it for a while, he did not subsist entirely on embalming fluid.
Has William Moody ever done a shoot interview?
Oh yeah. I've seen him.
Okay.
He's done a couple of them. He did one. I think he did one for Ring of Honor. I think he did one with Bobby Heenan. I want to say where they sit around and tell stories. I'm not sure exactly, but he
So-
has done at least a couple of them. He's very entertaining. Super funny guy.
We haven't covered an Undertaker match with Paul Bearer yet.
No,
I
we
guess
have
we
not.
haven't. We've
Oh,
done
wow.
we've done some latter day Taker matches, and we did the first one before Paul Bear showed up.
Well, we still got to do Undertaker versus Undertaker.
Yes.
Yes, I do. Yeah, I want to see that.
Oh my.
So a couple other things. We talked about Hulk Hogan forming the New World Order. I just wanted to at least mention that the New World Order was a phrase in like conspiracy theory
Yes.
politics for many years. I guess it's still brought up sometimes.
It still is, yeah.
When I guess from the right talking about globalist conspiracies, but I think also a little bit from the left sometimes.
Yeah, I think the New World Order was like a rebranded Illuminati sort of thing. I think it was something that I had my conspiracy. I was never like a full.
Does that movie Zeitgeist talk about it?
I think it does. Because that came out around the time I had I was never a full conspiracy theorist, but I had a conspiracy adjacent phase, probably 2009 to 11, somewhere around there. And it seems like it's something that has always kind of gone back and forth between I guess what you could argue is a more left interpretation of the fact that the wealthy practice class solidarity in a way where they really understand that they are all friends, and it's not necessarily a secret cabal trying to take over the world as it is just wealthy and powerful people like to hang out with each other and do each other favors, and then a more right interpretation, which is it's the Jews.
Yeah, that is the right interpretation.
On the left, the right wing interpretation.
The right wing, yes.
The
right is the right wing interpretation.
That is a thing. As much as I will complain about people willfully and aggressively misunderstanding, no, the right wing explanation.
The explanation on the left is also not just the wealthy being friends, but also the idea that multinational corporations have become much more powerful than nations.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, and
yes,
that's sort
that
of the New World Order.
I mean, that's objectively true, though, in a lot of
Well,
ways.
Whether it's not a conspiracy, that part isn't a conspiracy.
Well, that's and a lot of conspiracy stuff. Especially if you look at, I've read interpretations of the modern conspiracy theory narrative as from a folklore perspective, and it is kind of it bears about as much of a relationship to reality as folk tales do to actual human morality, kind of, I would say, or something like that, where it's kind of these stories that we tell about these things that we sort of know to be true, but have various interpretations of that often wind up being either bigoted or simplistic or
sounds like the wrestling criticism and journalism community.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. I could see that.
That's because wrestling is so opaque. A lot of it is guesswork and legends and stories kind of passed down from fans to fans. It's part of what makes it interesting.
And part of what makes it a metaphor for life in general. Speaking of globalism, we didn't mention at any point that the first Hulk Hogan versus Ultimate Warrior match was for both the WWF World Championship and the Intercontinental Championship, and they unified it at that point. The Warrior ended up having to abdicate the Intercontinental title eventually, but they united the titles at that point. They really wanted to make it seem like it was the two greatest wrestlers finally deciding who was the better.
And then they really wanted Warrior to be on the level that Hogan had been for the next 7 or 8 years. It didn't happen. He wasn't interesting enough, and he was too crazy to do business with anybody. Yeah, he fizzled out. He burned bright and he fizzled out. That's what happens when you're running at full speed the entire time.
So we also talked about this change in the wrestling business in the mid-90s, and they started to let people kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit more. There was a little bit more of this meta kind of narrative going on. And I just want to clarify a little bit. So I talked about how a lot of this started with the wrestler Brian Pillman and also with the promotion ECW. But I think I said something like in ECW, that was the first time that he directly referenced the Booker. But that actually first happened in WCW. The Booker Man promo directed at Kevin Sullivan was actually in WCW. And we talked about how there was this really interesting phenomenon where Pillman made a deal with Eric Bischoff where he would be actually fired from WCW, but was supposed to later return, but instead of returning, ended up signing with WWF.
Yeah.
At the same time, ECW was already doing some of that stuff beforehand, not just with Pillman, but before that with Steve Austin coming to ECW and talking shit about Hulk Hogan, and also Shane Douglas, even before that, talking about Ric Flair and challenging Ric Flair when Ric Flair was on top in WCW.
Now, Shane Douglas is a very interesting case in like the early 90s. His run in ECW. You know, he's like, I was never heavyweight champion anywhere because people don't want to work with me, and Ric Flair's holding me down, and he's not that good, and he's an old man, and I'm better than he is. And you don't usually, especially at the time, want to talk about the people on someone else's television show. And so he was like, I'm here in, Eastern Championship Wrestling, and I'll be the heavyweight champion here if no place else is going to have me.
And he would challenge Flair to come down there and to
Come
prove
to
who
the
the real
ECW
champion
arena.
is.
We'll have a fight, you know.
Update on me watching wrestling serials.
Mm-hmm.
It's the holidays. I come from a Catholic family. I married a Jew. I have had no time to fucking see or do anything. I barely was able to watch all of the matches for the episodes we recorded this week. So I promise that within the next few minisodes, I will be back in the swing of watching AEW and NXT and able to talk about
We're
it.
gonna strap Evan into a chair and get his eyes open, Clockwork Orange style,
Yeah,
and
it's-
just power him through Dynamite to the present day.
I want to mention a couple of things that I've seen in wrestling the last couple of weeks that I really enjoyed.
Please do.
We talked about the NWA. It didn't work out as something that NWA Power is something that Evan was going to watch. That's fine. The first NWA new NWA pay-per-view was the other week, Into the Fire, and it was fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was great beginning to end. They have such a unique for modern times way of telling their stories, and they let their characters be characters, and it was just, I love it. I think
Aaron
it's
Stevens is now one of my top
Yeah.
3 wrestling personalities on TV. I mean, I've
Oh,
always
man.
loved his work as Damian Sandow. When I first saw Damian Sandow, I was like, oh, that is the wrestling character that I would be
Yeah.
if I were a wrestler. And he's doing a slight variation on that because he can't quite be Damian Sandow,
That's fine.
but it's still brilliant.
And they got rid of Cornette like promptly, and so good for them. I like the old man run of the Rock and Roll Express. I just think it's delightful. And yeah, I just like it. I like the women. They're killing it. I liked the whole thing. Question mark.
Colt Cabana's getting to be a real star like he should
Good.
be.
Somebody use
good
that
stuff.
guy, right?
I'd also like to direct listeners' attention, if they haven't seen it yet, WWE Backstage has been a really interesting show. I haven't watched every episode. I watched the ones that CM Punk was on,
Right.
and they were great. CM Punk always has funny, interesting things to say. I really liked Baron Corbin's appearance and what he had to say about being a genuine wrestling heel and how very few people are willing to just piss off the fans legitimately, not do anything that they like,
Yeah.
and take all their criticism and, just continue to do it. I think Baron Corbin would be a lot more successful right now if he had better baby faces to feud with.
Yeah. I don't like Seth Rollins. I
or
mean, I know,
Roman Reigns.
I know Rollins has turned heel recently, but I don't like Seth Rollins. So when the heels mess with him, I don't care.
So now he stares blankly into the camera, and you're supposed to not like him.
Yes. Now he has 2 big guys standing behind him to do his dirty work. A fine tag team, the Authors of Pain, which is not a great name, but they're a good team.
If Baron Corbin had dumped dog food all over Daniel Bryan,
Yeah,
we'd be screaming for his head.
We'd be up in arms. Yeah. But
Are the Authors of Pain author-themed wrestlers where they do writing moves on you? No,
they're just 2 big dudes.
it's a real.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. That's either a wasted opportunity or a dumb fucking name that they shouldn't have gone with.
They probably wrote down, this is just me completely guessing, they probably wrote down 45 names and submitted them to Creative, and Creative was like, this one.
That's like if you had the Pineapple Boys. Do they
Yeah.
have any pineapple themed moves? No.
No.
Why would they?
I think it was better when they were in NXT and Paul Ellering was their manager.
Yeah,
Because
Ellering
Paul
had something.
Ellering is a loquacious, poetic kind of individual. So him being with them gave
Yeah.
a little bit of credence to that authorship idea.
Yeah, Ellering's kind of an old-timey manager. He's in his 60s. He agreed to be their manager at NXT because they taped every week or every few weeks at Full Sail University where they tape NXT. Once they brought the Authors to the main roster, Ellering left. He didn't want to travel. He's done.
They probably also wanted them to have a manager who could take bumps
They
and could get recompense eventually. Well, they gave him Drake Maverick for a while.
Right. Yeah, that was cool.
I have one more note. We never
What do we got?
mentioned the name of Hulk Hogan's nephew, Horace Hogan.
Horace Hogan.
Ooh,
He should
that's
get
a,
his moment.
That's a rough name.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, God knows what his real name was.
I don't know.
Should I look it up?
No. I mean,
I'm gonna look it
sure,
up.
Look it up. I guess he's insignificant.
Turples Bolea.
Turples Bole. Well, that's his name
It is,
now.
yeah.
Turples.
Michael Allen Balea.
Right.
Man, that was a
it's
letdown.
Yeah, wow. Sorry, listeners.
Yeah.
If you'd like to have more exciting names mentioned on this podcast, you should check out our Patreon.
Yes.
In all seriousness, this is coming out on Christmas. We've been doing this now for we've been putting out episodes for about 3 months. We've been doing this now for like 6 months.
Yeah.
I feel like, and it's amazing. We are, I think, like today or tomorrow, we're gonna hit 1,000 listens altogether, which is unbelievable to me. We've
not including SoundCloud or YouTube views. So yeah, 1,000 listens. Thank you all very much for listening and continuing to.
And if you like what we do, if you find it entertaining, you can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/contestingwrestling. We put out one extra bonus episode a week. It's a full-length episode. We are really hoping in 2020 to be able to put out a bunch more stuff, either interviews or we've got plans for a mini-series, that kind of thing. So you should, I don't know, check us out. And hey, worst comes to worst, join it for a month, listen to all the premium episodes, and then if you really hate it, you can quit. It's okay.
Yeah,
We're not
that's
going to
fine.
judge you.
We'll be happy that you gave us $5 in the first place. Seriously, give us a shot. Thank you very much.
That's $5 more than no dollars.
Yes,
That's just science.
that's why
what
that's
that
why he's
is.
the professor.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, I can't do that kind of math
No.
for you. So that's why Ben's here, and you should be able to compensate him for that.
I go up to the sandwich counter. I just shout turkey. And they're like, "That'll be money," and I'll be like, "Oh no," and just leave. That's the end of that.
That's why you carry around pockets full of like peanuts. right?
Peanuts. Yeah. Just
How many peanuts
How
is
many
that?
peanuts?
I always want to pay for things in ham.
Ham. Just sliced ham. Just
Yep, sliced
Like,
ham.
there.
You watched Magic for Humans on Netflix?
No.
It's very entertaining. It's with like a comedy magician guy, Justin Willman, and he has a whole bit in it where he does ham-based magic with sliced ham. And he has people shuffle the ham slice. It's high quality stuff.
That's great.
It is. That's all I need for 10 years ago I was like, we live in a golden age of television. I love Breaking Bad. Now I'm like, I want to see the funny magic ham man.
Yeah.
I'm watching the Food Network. I don't care. Please don't give me real thing. I just watched The Witcher, and The Witcher is like the best. It's like this. It's a really, really well shot, well produced, unbelievably dumb fucking show, and it's great. It's like if
That's what you want out of television.
It was so good. Do we have final thoughts?
No, man. Happy New Year,
That's-
everybody. Our wonkiness and our schedule will get flattened out, but we're taking care of everything. Don't worry. We got a lot of big plans coming up. We're just gonna keep it churning.
Yeah.
Contest wrestling yourself. Watch it, and if something looks off, like that's valid. Think about it. And I don't mean like think about it. I mean no, think about it. It's art.
Engage your
And,
critical faculties.
There you go. Thank you. Engage your critical faculties.
With
I've
whatever
enjoyed this.
you're looking at.
Yeah, come on, man. The world is an interesting place.
Goodbye.